Welcome to another audio reading session of Listen In, presented by Tenkara Angler. We're excited to have you with us again. Today we'll be presenting A Full House in the Smokies, as read by author and editor-in-chief of Tenkara Angler, Michael Agneta. I'm not going to lie, I was a little apprehensive of what I was going to find in traveling to the Smokies over this past Labor Day weekend. With the recent coronavirus-induced narrative being that people are flocking to the outdoors in record numbers, I could only imagine that every campground would be full, every trail would be crowded, and all the fishing holes lined with anglers. Throwing that caution to the wind, I tried to score a last-minute campsite on the North Carolina side of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but they were all reserved. Probably had been for weeks. You snooze, you lose. While there weren't a ton of options, I did find a motel room in Cherokee for 2 nights. The plan was to drive up on Friday after work, fish all day on Saturday, sleep, fish most of the day on Sunday, and then head home. Not blending Monday into the trip was intentional, as that would serve as a day-at-home buffer between the activities of the long weekend and the realities of the upcoming work week. After the long drive from North Florida to Western North Carolina on Friday night, I woke early on Saturday with the intention of hitting the streams at first light before anyone else arrived. Boy, was I wrong. Driving along the road that parallels the Econolofty and Raven Fork rivers on the way to the park, every gravel pull-off was already overflowing with pickup trucks and minivans. Eager fishermen, women, and children stood at the bumpers of their vehicles, either squeezing into rubber waders, loading up khaki fishing vests, or checking the Berkeley trilene spooled onto their spinning reel. Some were even already knee-deep in the water, casting toward what I assume were recently stocked trout from the Cherokee Tribal Trout Hatchery, located a few miles upstream. Looking out the window and occasionally waving hello to lighten the mood resulting from awkward eye contact, I kept driving on towards the park's entrance. I wasn't planning on fishing these larger waters. Fortunately, these anglers did not seem to have my appetite for wild and likely smaller trout. Once I crossed the threshold of the park's entrance, I was alone. No other anglers to be found. That's better. The extended day of fishing that followed was a wonderful mountain stream experience, the kind that requires slow, deliberate pacing, as the potential for an encounter with a wild rainbow or even a brook trout was in each and every hole, pocket, and riffle. I love smaller waters like these, the kind that make you really work for the fish, as you must not only navigate microcurrents and plunge pools of uncertain depths, but are also forced to scale large boulders and down trees to simply progress upstream. Unlike the environment of my friends lined shoulder to shoulder outside the park, there were no banks in which to casually stroll, and definitely nowhere to set up a folding camp chair. If there were, the thick clusters of rhododendron would surely impede any sort of timely procession. On this part of the stream, there was a generally unobstructed overhead casting lane, so I was able to fish my preferred headwaters gear, the 340 centimeter Oni Type 3, paired with 12.5 feet of level line, and an assortment of various kabari. This day was largely a redhead silk futsu day, as that pattern, tied by creekside kabari, seemed to pique the interest of the stream's residents the most often. The rainbows were generous with their time, allowing me to spend more than my share with them over the course of the day. While to most they would not be considered a trophy worth of wall mounting, the sleek chrome bullets that rose from the depths were definitely prizes to the small stream enthusiast. The morning of day 2 was much like the first, although sightseers and photographers replaced anglers along the roadsides. The elk were out early this morning, making for a wonderful viewing experience as the morning mist burned off over the tree line. In all my trips to Great Smoky Mountains National Park, I never had much luck in seeing the elk out and about, but on this day they were everywhere, certainly a precursor of good things to come. My eventual destination involved a bit of a longer hike in, then up, to some slightly tighter waters. Rainbows remained the quarry. Upon descending the steep bank down into the cold water, it was running high and fast, the shade of the thick canopy eliminating much of the ambient light. As such, I chose the soft-hackled Sakasa kabari to achieve greater depth in the water column. The fly's turns of white feather also provided the bonus of increased subsurface visibility. Pairing this pattern with the slightly shorter Nissin Royal Stage 320 and the same 12.5-foot level line proved to be a desirable combination. This more compact arena, paired with steeper and slicker vertical climbs, made for an intense full-body workout. I was pleased to see that the Orvis Pro Approach wading shoes procured earlier this year were passing their first serious test. I'd highly recommend them for streams such as this. However, they cannot be worn stock. I had first tried them in North Georgia with mixed results, finding they do require a bit of aftermarket studding to ensure safe footing. A recommendation by a friend of the addition of grip studs was the difference between reliable traction and personal misfortune. As for the fishing, a bit more coaxing was required today. Dead drifts were not successful, nor were pronounced splats into pockets. Rather, twitches with and against the current proved to be extremely attractive. Pausing the fly momentarily in front of obstacles at the feet of pools prior to them plunging down a level was also a tactic that worked on more than one occasion. Unlike the first day, a footpath did not parallel this prong very closely, so it was quite difficult to exit. This cut into the actual fishing time as I was forced to descend the same way I ascended, which took a bit of time, in addition to retracing many well-placed steps. Hours later and back at the tailgate of my SUV, I sat down in the cargo area and began sliding off the well-used wet neoprene gaiters, wading socks, and shoes. In doing that end of outing ritual, I couldn't help be a bit introspective, looking back fondly on what I feared might be a weekend of congested streams and poor fishing. It just goes to show that if you're willing to go a bit off the beaten path to pursue whatever you're after, you'll undoubtedly be rewarded in some way, even should you decide to drive almost 8 hours to fish one of the country's most populous national parks over an extremely busy holiday weekend. Once again, the Smokies proved to be more than worth the round trip. Thank you for taking this time with Tenkara Angler. We hope you've enjoyed this article. If you have a story to tell, a photo to share, or a fly recipe that's just too good to keep secret, we would love to feature your content. Find your way over to tenkaraangler.com to learn how to submit your contribution for publication.